Yeah, we had a transaction with Elmcroft in early 18, and since then I serve on well, my volunteer day job is that I'm board chair at Argentum. Tim Buchanan finished up his term, and it's a little bit unusual to not have an operating CEO as the board chair, but they asked me to serve. I've been on that board for a long time. Actually, was on the ASHA executive committee years ago as well, and we can touch on those issues if you want later. But I've spent a lot of time, and then with COVID, it really accelerated the amount of work, and I really couldn't be prouder of James Bald and the team at Argentum. Focused on provider relief funds, we put together a team of lawyers, focused on trying to get legislation and executive orders to protect senior housing operators around the country. The business, as you know, you're taking care of the frailest of the frail. You're taking care of folks in their 80s who are in the last chapters of their life. They come to us with typically a host of comorbidities and other issues just because they've lived long years. And so you've got a workforce that brought COVID into the buildings, a fragile group of folks living with us, and it sort of made for a perfect storm in many ways. But I couldn't be prouder. I think the nursing home industry honestly got unfairly slammed in many ways by the press and regulators and the politicians, and that's a longer conversation. The data that I'm aware of that we helped put together with Nick and an organization called NORC out of Chicago is that the senior housing industry, the private pay side, did rather well. I mean, they were aggressive in terms of helping to manage the workforce and to talking about vaccines and to introducing that to the workforce, to making sure it got implemented with the folks living in the buildings. And so Argentum was a huge voice in all of that: liability protection, provider relief. The solutions we got weren't perfect. The private pay side of senior housing, if you sort of measure it with a yardstick, probably got shortchanged by the politicians in terms of the amount of funding. But we started from ground zero and ended up getting billions of dollars of relief for the industry. And it wasn't me, it was me and a lot of volunteers and good leadership at Argentum, really good leadership at ASHA, Dave Schless and his team over there, first-rate government relations people. And again, this is part of a larger conversation, but one of the real lessons that came out of COVID for those organizations, we've always, I would say, dabbled in and stuck our toe in advocacy because this is an industry that's largely regulated at the state level. We weren't as sophisticated in terms of advocacy at the federal level as the industry needed to be. We've sort of gone from junior kindergarten, if you will, and we're now in about third or fourth grade of that journey. But we got to get to high school and college and postgraduate level, to use that analogy, in terms of advocacy, both at the federal and at the state level. And I think the COVID has accelerated that. But to answer your questions, that's my volunteer day work. And then I'm on the board of a human resource private equity backed company that's an HR solution for post-acute care, addressing the workforce shortages. I'm on the board of a company, interestingly enough, called Assembly in Chicago, that's backed by a terrific private equity firm called Shore Capital. Really smart bunch of people. And that company is what its name implies. It's about assembling the outside healthcare services, both real life services like podiatry, to technology and revenue cycle management services for the post-acute care space, so that they can operate more efficiently and do the work that they need to do. And then, interestingly enough, I'm on the board of a publicly traded company that is the second largest. It's a bit of an ESG play. We're the second largest manager of medical waste in the country, and we take care of it in everything from dermatology clinics to veterinary clinics to hundreds and hundreds of assisted living and skilled nursing care. And if you think about the disposition of COVID needles during this pandemic, the name of the company is Sharps, from the term of sharp objects and needles. And so we manage that soup to nuts for healthcare providers across the country. And we have a product there called MedSafe that is that's the best product that I've seen. That if you walk into a CVS across the country, many of them, you'll see a mailbox looking box, and it's a place where controlled substances can be disposed of and not re-accessed. And then we dispose of them in an environmentally sustainable, appropriate, compliant way. And we do that both for providers like CVS and for healthcare providers all over the country, assisted living communities. Think about, in all the years I operated senior housing, it's not a huge issue, but the issue of diversion of narcotics. It's a real issue, and we all, anybody that's awake is aware of the opioid issues in this country over the last decade. And so how do you, when grandmother passes away and leaves those medications behind, how do you comply with the law? You can't put them down the commode like they did 10 years ago. That's illegal under environmental laws. So we found solutions for that.